I'd like to tell you, as a child, I had lofty thoughts. I had grand thoughts. I had theological thoughts. The truth is, I needed something tangible. You couldn't just tell me about something, whether good or bad. I had to experience it. So tell me not to touch the hot stove. I gotta make sure it really is that hot. Tell me about gravity. I can't believe it unless I climb to the top of the silo and drop something off and watch it fall. I learned about faith through these tangible ways. I learned about faith through hands. Maybe that's not what you want to hear from the person standing in the pulpit who's supposed to be academically and theologically trained. But I learned about faith through hands. Beginning at home as a child through my parents. Sure, they read to us from the Bible. They told us Bible stories. Every night we had devotions and read little visits with God. We went to church without fail every Sunday, and we said our bedtime prayers. But that faith became tangible through their hands. I watched my mom prepare meals for our family and for neighbors and friends, and it wasn't a chore, it was a work of art. The way she included us in the process. The way she seemed joyful about it, even though now I realize how exhausted she was. I watched her make gifts at Christmas. We unpacked the Christmas presents around the tree, and there were things that I thought later, how did she make all those things? It had to be in the middle of the night as she got out her sewing machine after we went to bed and made bathrobes and pajamas and duffel bags. This rocking chair is here because one year she and my grandfather put this together. This chair was in 16 pieces, and my dad paid $10 for it at an auction because my dad was the guy at the auction who'd buy what nobody else would buy. It laid in a pile in 16 pieces. So my mom and my grandfather spent, I don't know how many hundreds of hours sanding, gluing. They respun spindles. They had to get the seat wet and bend it, get it wet and bend it week after week. And then I got to open it on Christmas morning when I had my first teaching job and living in my first house. And my mother cried. She cried because she didn't have anything else to give me. They didn't have a lot of money, so she felt bad giving me this beautiful chair. Humble hands. Hands that said, I have love to give, and I'm going to do it however I can. I watched my mom gently with my brothers, lifting them and carrying them. I watched her guide her aging parents. I watched her take care of neighbors and friends. I watched her yet cleaning the church, making the bulletins, finding ways to make that faith tangible with her hands. I learned about faith with hands. I learned about faith with hands as I watched my dad gently guide the cattle where they were supposed to be. Gently, just pushing them where they were meant to be. I watched him hauling wood to the house because we had a wood stove until about 15 years ago. I watched him with a hammer, with a chainsaw. I watched him plant hundreds of trees. I watched those hands help a neighbor clean up their entire farm after a tornado went through. I watched those hands help people move off the farm when they lost their farm during the farm crisis of the 80s. I watched those hands help his father go to the bathroom. Those hands guided me off a roof one time, for pity's sake. We tore down buildings. We were tearing down a barn. We had the floorboards off, the haymow boards off. We were removing the roof boards with a crowbar, and for whatever reason, I froze. I've been in a lot higher buildings. I've been in a 3-story schoolhouse, much like the Washington Pavilion, but for some reason that day I froze. My white knuckles were clinging to the 2x4, and I could not move. And my dad came and gently pried my fingers off and gently guided me down. He could not force me. If you've ever been with someone who's frozen, force is not what you need. What you need are these big bushel basket, gentle hands guiding you. I learned about faith through hands. I learned that we can either live with our hands wide open in faith, or we can live with them clenched so tightly in fear. And I continue to learn about hands from all of you, about faith with your hands, the way you serve. I had a former member call me one day and say, all the other guys are in the field, can you come help pour cement? I learned a lot about the lives of his neighbors and how to be an artist with cement of all things. We continue to learn about faith. I love to read books and I love discussions, but it's most tangible for me when we work with our hands. Think about all the jobs where we use our hands to bring life, to create comfort, to stand together at cemeteries and hold hands because there's no words at that point. Only the touch of a neighbor, only the embrace of a friend. Jesus spent his ministry prying people's hands away from the things they were so scared of. He spent his time laying hands on people and bringing them peace and healing. He spent his ministry being gentle with people and guiding them as a shepherd guides their sheep. Jesus opened up his hands to the will of God and said, "Not my will, but thy will be done." Think for a minute about what it's like when your fists are clenched. What happens? It's not just your fist. It goes up your arm and into your neck, and even create a headache. Think about those times that your fists are clenched. You're waiting for a call from the doctor. You're waiting for your adolescent to come home. You're worrying in the middle of the night and you're pacing the floor and you're either wringing your hands or you're clenching your fists. Think about those times and what it feels like, not just in your fist, but throughout your whole body. The pain that it creates. The nights and the horrors and the worries. When we clench our fists, we are closed in on ourselves. We can't see those around us because we're so busy going in on ourselves. This time I'm going to ask, we hand out Tootsie Rolls. Just pass them out, pass the basket to each other, and I'd like you to offer one to the person next to you. Okay? And open up your hand to receive that. What is it like when you open up your hand to receive? What happens? And maybe clench your fist before it comes, just for the example. What's it like when you open it up? Once again, it's not just your hand muscles. It goes up your arm. Your shoulder relaxes. Suddenly, there's not so much pressure on the back of your neck and behind your temples. Now think of the times that you open your hands to accept a gift, to hold somebody else's hand, to receive communion, to lift up a child, to release a balloon, to read a book. We know about opening up our hands, and most of the time when we think of opening our hands, we are not injured, we are not afraid. There's vulnerability, but we are open to wonder. When our hands are open, we're free to receive, we're vulnerable, but we're also more free to interact with each other and experience the kingdom of God. Ron Irvine writes this: we hold on to our homes, cars, possessions. We hold on to our kids, our spouses, our friendships. Why do we hold so tightly to that which will not last? Often suffocating what we love the most. He quotes Robert Bly: our disasters come from letting nothing live for itself, from the longing we have to pull everything, even our friends, into ourselves and let nothing alone. Then he asks the question, what if? What if? How do I treat my money? With open hands or clenched fists? How do I treat my material possessions? With open hands or clenched fists? How do I treat my career? With open hands or clenched fists? How do I react to what other people say? With open hands or clenched fists? How do I treat someone I disagree with? With open hands or clenched fists? How do I interact with people of other religious beliefs? With open hands or clenched fists? How do I get along with people of different political beliefs? With open hands or clenched fists? How do I act with other human beings? With peace or clenched fists? Open our hands, Lord. We want to serve others. Amen. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for all the ways you come to our fears and pry our fingers loose and help us to live. We ask that you would help us as we open our hands each day to trust that you are with us, to understand that in the vulnerability there is wholeness, and there is healing, and there is hope. We pray this in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Our next hymn is Open Our Eyes, Lord, and we are also singing Open Our Hands.